You'll stop feeling guilty for saying no after this. There's a moment in every person's life when the word no becomes heavier than it should be. It sits on the tongue like a stone, refusing to move, even when we know we're exhausted, overwhelmed, or simply uninterested. And what's strange is that we aren't afraid of the word itself, we're afraid of what happens after it. The disappointment in someone's voice, the sudden silence in a group chat, the feeling that we've let someone down or that we're no longer good. So we say yes, again, and again, and again, until one day we realize we've built a life not out of our choices, but out of our fear of disappointing others. And that is where this journey begins. Because today I want to show you something that most people go their entire lives without realizing. You don't feel guilty for saying no because you're kind, you feel guilty because you are conditioned to believe your worth depends on your compliance. Imagine a young child. Every time they share, they're praised. Every time they help, they're celebrated. Every time they agree, they're seen as good. Meanwhile, saying no is punished not always harshly, but subtly. A disappointed look, a sigh, a gentle scolding. We learn early that no disrupts harmony, that no risks love, that no makes us harder to accept. So we bury the word deep inside us and replace it with yes. Yes to the extra work. Yes to the favor. Yes to the emotional labor. Yes to being available even when we're running on fumes. But here's the philosophical twist. If love and acceptance are given only when you say yes, then they were never real to begin with. This video is not about making you cold or detached. It's about giving you back something that was taken from you. Sovereignty. The existential philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "We are condemned to be free," meaning whether we like it or not, our choices define us. So when you say yes out of guilt, fear, or pressure, you're shaping a version of yourself that the world chose, not the version you chose. And I want you to think deeply about this. How many decisions in your life were born from fear instead of truth? If your yes doesn't come from authenticity, then it steals from you. It steals your time, your energy, your peace, your identity.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's craft the opening hook, the moment that grabs you like a Mr. Beast intro but hits with philosophical weight. Picture this. You are standing in front of two doors. The first door says say yes and keep everyone happy. The second door says, say no and keep yourself honest. Most people choose the first door not because it's right, but because it's safe. The irony is that the first door leads to a maze with no exit. The more you say yes to avoid guilt, the more your life becomes filled with obligations that aren't yours. The second door is scary because it leads to solitude before it leads to freedom. But freedom demands honesty. Honesty demands boundaries. And boundaries demand that you stop sacrificing your life to protect the feelings of others. Here's the part most people never think about. Every yes you give someone else is a no you give yourself. Time is not infinite. Energy is not infinite. Attention is not infinite. So every time you avoid saying no because you don't want to disappoint someone, you are choosing to disappoint yourself instead. And ask yourself honestly which disappointment hurts more in the long run. We think saying no makes us selfish, but selfishness is not putting yourself first. Selfishness is expecting others to put you first. And look how often that happens. People don't get upset when you say no because they're hurt. They get upset because your no interferes with their convenience. They weren't thinking about your capacity, your exhaustion, your priorities. They were thinking about how you could benefit them. And yet somehow you are the one who feels guilty. Let's take the philosophical inquiry deeper. Why do we fear rejection so intensely? Why does the idea of someone being disappointed in us feel like a threat to our existence? It's because on a subconscious level, we believe that love must be earned. And the way we earn it is through compliance. But here's the shocking truth. Love given conditionally is not love. It is approval disguised as affection. Approval is addictive. Approval feels like safety. Approval feels like worth. But approval is also volatile, unpredictable, easily lost. So you chase it. You bend, you stretch, you contort, you please. You say yes even when your entire body whispers no. But real love, real connection does not collapse when you set a boundary. Real love respects the shape of your soul. Here's a thought experiment for you. If you woke up tomorrow with zero guilt, zero fear, and zero sense of obligation, what would you say no to immediately? Write those answers down. They are the cage you currently live in. Now we hit the viral re-engagement moment, the sentence that stops you and makes you rethink your entire identity. You don't owe anyone access to you simply because they want it. That statement alone can rewrite your life. And here comes the paradox. The moment you start saying no without guilt, the people who truly value you will stay. The ones who only valued your compliance will fade. And isn't that the most clarifying filter of all? The inner rebellion that rewrites your identity from people pleaser to self-possessor. Most people think guilt is a feeling. But guilt, especially the guilt around saying no, is far more powerful and far more insidious than a simple emotion. It is an identity shaper. It's the invisible hand that bends your decisions, the whisper that makes you apologize for existing, the quiet judge that convinces you your needs are less important than everyone else's. And if you've spent years saying yes to avoid upsetting people, then guilt has become part of your psychological architecture. But here's the truth no one tells you. Guilt is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. Guilt is a sign that you're breaking an old conditioning. In this part, we're not just talking about guilt, we're dismantling it, rewiring it, and reclaiming the self it tried to silence. Let's start with a blunt philosophical question. Who taught you that your needs were less important than other people's expectations? Somewhere in your past, maybe childhood, maybe a relationship, maybe a cultural message, you learned that being agreeable was the safest way to be loved. And once that belief sets in, the brain does something fascinating. It begins to equate disagreement with danger. So every no feels like a small betrayal, not of others but of the identity you've been performing. Your body reacts with anxiety, your chest tightens, your heartbeat quickens, not because no is wrong, but because no threatens the persona you've worn for years. But here's the philosophical twist. Identity is not who you truly are. Identity is who you think you must be for the world. This is why saying no feels like tearing fabric. You're not just declining a request, you're defying the version of yourself that believes being good means being available. But what if the real self, the self beneath the conditioning, is the one begging you to say no? What if every time you feel guilt, it's actually your true self trying to wake you up? Here's where we introduce the first major shift, the difference between kindness and compliance. People pleasers mistake the two. Compliance means sacrificing your own needs so that others won't feel discomfort. Kindness means acting from truth, integrity, and genuine care. Compliance is fear-driven, kindness is strength-driven. Compliance drains you, kindness energizes you. Compliance keeps relationships shallow, kindness deepens them. And yet, how often have you mistaken self-betrayal for compassion? Imagine this scenario. Someone asks you for a favor and you immediately feel pressure. The old you, conditioned you, says yes automatically. But the awakened self pauses and asks, can I do this without hurting myself? That question is the beginning of self-respect. But guilt will panic. Guilt will scream. Guilt will say, if you say no, they will think you're selfish. But watch what happens when you push through. Every time you say no with truth, guilt shrinks. Every time you say yes out of fear, guilt grows. You're not fighting guilt, you're training it. Now let's talk about the root of guilt, the fear of not being liked. This is the most human fear of all, the shadow behind every people-pleasing decision. But here's the shocking reality: being universally liked is impossible. Not metaphorically, literally impossible. Even saints are criticized. Even heroes are hated. If disagreement is unavoidable and judgment is guaranteed, then sacrificing yourself to earn universal approval is not only painful, it's pointless. So ask yourself, if being liked by everyone is impossible, why do you keep betraying yourself trying to achieve it? The next psychological insight cuts even deeper. When you say yes while wanting to say no, the relationship becomes fundamentally dishonest. You're giving a version of yourself that isn't real. You're agreeing to things with silent resentment beneath your smile. And over time, resentment transforms into bitterness, bitterness into emotional withdrawal, and emotional withdrawal into fractured connections. This is the paradox most people never see. Saying yes to keep the peace destroys the very peace you're trying to protect. The people who truly care about you don't want your silent suffering, they want your honesty. So here's the philosophical turning point. Guilt is not a moral compass, guilt is a habit. Habits can be unlearned, rewired, replaced. The brain reorganizes itself when you act differently. Every no plants a seed of self-worth. Every boundary strengthens the neural pathway of courage. Every moment you choose authenticity over approval builds a new identity, one rooted not in fear, but in truth. But the greatest transformation comes when you realize this. When you say no to others, you are saying yes to the life you meant to live. Yes to rest. Yes to peace. Yes to self-respect. Yes to time for what matters. Yes to relationships built on truth, not compliance. And perhaps the deepest question of all is this. If you spent the rest of your life choosing truth over guilt, how different would your world look? Because in the next part, we take this even further. We explore the real-world consequences of saying no, how your environment shifts, who stays, who leaves, and how your soul rises when you finally reclaim your autonomy. When you start saying no, the world reshapes itself around your new identity. The moment you start saying no without guilt, the world responds, and not always gently. This is the stage most people never prepare for. The moment when your new sense of self collides with the expectations others have built around your old self. Every yes you gave in the past trained people how to treat you. You taught them that you'd always help, always listen, always show up, always absorb the inconvenience so they didn't have to. You trained them to expect your compliance, your availability, your willingness. And so when you first begin to reclaim your boundaries, people often react not to the boundary itself, but to the loss of privilege. And this is where many people retreat. They think, if someone gets upset, I must be doing something wrong. But here is the truth. When you stop betraying yourself, some people will feel betrayed. That feeling doesn't mean you were wrong, it means they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. The world reshapes itself the moment you reshape yourself. Some people will be stunned, asking what changed. Others will test your resolve, pushing back, guilt-tripping, persuading, trying to return you to your old role. But here's the deep philosophical truth. Pushback is proof that your boundary was necessary. People don't test what doesn't serve them. They test the boundaries that take something from them, your time, your energy, your emotional labor. Saying no becomes a mirror, revealing the true motives behind relationships. The people who only loved your compliance will fall away. The people who love your essence will adjust, respect, or even celebrate your growth. This is where the deeper inquiry begins. Ask yourself, who in your life benefits the most from you having no boundaries? And perhaps even more importantly, why did you allow them to benefit at your expense? These questions aren't meant to blame you, they're meant to liberate you. Because if you can identify the patterns, you can break them. But if you never examine them, you will repeat them for the rest of your life. Let's explore the psychological shift that happens inside you as you say no more often. At first, your nervous system reacts violently. Your heartbeat speeds up, your chest tightens. You might replay the interaction in your head 1,000 times. You wonder if the person is upset, if you should apologize, if you should change your mind. But here's the moment you must recognize. This internal chaos is not a sign you made the wrong choice, it's a sign you've just broken a lifelong pattern. And breaking patterns feels like breaking rules your brain thought were essential for survival. But as time passes, something incredible happens. The anxiety shrinks, the guilt fades, the pauses between discomfort shorten, and suddenly you begin to feel a new emotion: power. Not power over others, but power over others, but power over yourself. The power of authenticity, the power of alignment, the power of finally living in a way that reflects who you are, not who you were conditioned to be. Now let's address one of the biggest fears people have. If I say no, I will lose people. Yes, you will. But here's the twist. The people you lose are precisely the people who should not be shaping your life. You don't lose anyone real by being real. If honesty pushes someone away, that person was not meant to stay. And if your boundaries offend someone, that offense reveals their entitlement, not your selfishness. This is the cleansing effect of saying no. It filters your circle. It purifies your environment. It strengthens the connections worth keeping and dissolves the ones that were built on your silence. But there's another layer one most people rarely consider. When you say no, you give others permission to say no too. You model authenticity. You model courage. You model emotional adulthood. Think of how many people in your life break themselves to keep others comfortable. Think of how many people you love who are also tired, overwhelmed, and afraid to disappoint. When you choose personal truth over social ease, you open a door they may have never realized existed. Your boundary becomes their blueprint. Your courage becomes their catalyst. And your refusal to live as a people pleaser becomes a silent invitation for others to stop living as one too. So if you ever feel guilty about saying no, ask yourself, what if my boundary is the thing that frees someone else to build theirs? As we move through this transformation, something extraordinary emerges. You begin to feel the weight of your own life again. You start to recognize your desires, your limits, your dreams, your energies. You remember that your life is yours, not a public resource for others to make withdrawals from. This realization is both terrifying and exhilarating. Terrifying because it demands ownership. Exhilarating because it offers freedom. And it leads to the final, most profound discovery. Your time, your attention, and your energy are currencies, and saying no is how you stop others from spending what they never earned. The spiritual power of choosing yourself even when the world expects otherwise. There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when you realize something has shifted inside you. Something old has cracked. Something new has awakened. It happens after you've said no a few times, after you've watched the world wobble around you, after you see who respects your boundaries and who resists them. And beneath it all, you begin to feel a truth you spent years running from. Your life was never meant to be lived according to other people's desires. Not your parents' expectations, not your friends' convenience, not your partner's comfort, not society's scripts. And this realization is the beginning of the end of guilt. Because when you see your life as your own, the pressure to please dissolves. The obligation to obey evaporates. The fear of disappointing others shrinks. Instead, a new sense of responsibility emerges, not toward them, but toward yourself. This final chapter is about the deepest transformation, not just learning to say no, but learning to become the person who no longer feels guilty for it. Because guilt is a symptom of misalignment. When you align with truth, guilt loses its purpose. Imagine carrying a backpack full of rocks for years, believing each rock was necessary for someone else's comfort. Every time you said yes when you meant no, another rock was added. But the moment you begin to choose yourself, you reach into the backpack and start removing them, one by one. At first, you're shocked at how heavy the load had become, but then a strange sensation appears: lightness. And with that lightness, clarity. And with that clarity, courage. Let's go deeper into the psychological evolution that happens when you remove guilt from your decisions. First, you gain emotional sovereignty. This means you no longer outsource your peace to other people's reactions. Whether someone approves or disapproves becomes information, not a threat. Their disappointment becomes a passing cloud, not a storm inside you. Their expectations no longer define your obligations. And this leads to a radical internal shift. Your self-worth becomes internally generated, not externally borrowed. Second, you begin to reclaim your time. For the first time, your hours belong to you, not to guilt-driven obligations. You start noticing the space you never had before: space to rest, to think, to breathe, to create, to explore, to exist without rushing to soothe someone else's discomfort. And in this space, you rediscover the parts of yourself you abandoned: the passions, the preferences, the dreams, the boundaries, the ideas. This rediscovery is not small, it is a rebirth. because guilt had been blocking the doorway to your own life. Third, relationships transform. The ones built on dependency crumble. The ones built on authenticity deepen. You begin to notice something profound. The people who truly love you do not want a version of you that sacrifices everything. They want a version of you that is whole. And setting boundaries, saying no, is how you become whole again. Healthy relationships thrive on truth, not self-erasure. But unhealthy relationships demand your silence. Your no exposes the difference. And now we arrive at the deepest philosophical revelation of all. Saying no is an act of spiritual identity. It is a declaration that your life force, your time, your emotional capacity, and your existence are sacred. In many spiritual traditions, the self is considered a temple. But if your life is a temple, then saying no is the gate that protects it. A temple with no gates is not a sanctuary, it's a public space. And for most of your life, guilt kept your gates wide open. Anyone could walk in. Anyone could take. Anyone could claim your time, your energy, your kindness. But when you learn to say no, you become the guardian of your own sacred space. This leads to the final reflective question, one that only you can answer. What would your life look like if you only said yes to the things that honored your deepest truth? Not the things that made people like you, not the things that protected your reputation, but the things that aligned with who you are becoming. Imagine the strength of that life. Imagine the peace. Imagine the freedom. Because at the end of it all, the truth is simple. You were never born to be a yes machine. You were born to be a full human being with limits, needs, desires, and a soul worthy of protection. And saying no is not the betrayal, it is the beginning of becoming someone you can finally be proud of. You'll stop feeling guilty for saying no after this, because from this moment forward, you finally understand that your no is not rejection, it is self-respect in its purest form.